today is Sunday, and I'm speaking to you from New York City. We are continuing our discussions on You Are the Universe, discovering your cosmic self and why it matters. And so today the question comes from Elvira, and I think it is she, yes, Elvira, is sending her question from Romania. I've been to Romania, by the way, and loved it. I was there for the Michael Jackson concert with Michael Jackson in Bucharest many, many years ago, and I really enjoyed my visit to Romania, to Bucharest. So Elvira asks, first of all, Elvira says, Namaste from Romania. Dear Dr. Chopra, I've been watching your live videos every day for 1 year, and I'm fascinated by your quote-unquote brilliant mind, your energy, your wisdom, and your kindness. I've also read 7 of your books, wow, in Romania, including You Are the Universe, and I can say you've changed my life. Thank you, Elvira, for saying that. I'm grateful for this. Now I have a question for you, and if you consider it interesting, please answer it. On page 111 of You Are the Universe, on page 111, you wrote that simple observation causes wave function to collapse. The universe is made of what we want it to show us. So, each of us is perceiving the same reality differently. In other words, each of us creates her own reality. Thank you. So, of course, the answer is not a simple yes or a no, but you definitely participate in the experience of what you call reality. In the experience of what you call reality. We all participate in the co-creation of the experience that we call reality. Of course, that reality is of two kinds. One is perceptual experience, which we have objectified as the physical world, and then mental experience of thoughts and emotions and imagination, which we have classified as the mental world. So, of course, reality is one. Physical and mental are categories created by human beings. And the question is, what is that one reality in which we are all participating, and what do we mean by we when we use the word we? In fact, Elvira, I would ask you this question. Who or what is it that asked this question, and who or what is it that wants to know the answer? You know, the other day I asked my friend Michael Shermer, the head of the Skeptic magazine, I asked him on Twitter, I said, you speak so much of rationality, your website is based on rationality, your Twitter account is based on rationality. Can you tell me what the source of thought is, what the source of perception is? And he, being a physicalist, he answered, Michael Shermer answered, perception is a result of electrochemical activity in the brain as a result of signals going from the environment to the brain, and then there is the experience that we call perception. In other words, reality is a given, and our perception is basically creating a representation of that in our brain. Furthermore, he said that thought is an integrated firing of neural networks. So he had a ready explanation for both perception and thought. And this is indeed the physicalist explanation, but it doesn't answer the hard problem of consciousness. How do integrated signals in neural networks produce thought and perception? It doesn't answer that question, because what you experience is a three-dimensional world in space and time, and operating according to certain laws of causality. And so it doesn't answer the hard problem. In fact, the more you ask yourself, who or what is it that wants to know the answers, the harder it gets, because a neural network, it seems, would not be asking these questions. A neural network cannot wonder about the nature of wonder. A neural network cannot think about thought. A neural network cannot reflect or be aware of that which we call an experience. Awareness is still what defines every experience. So does a neural network produce a thought that wonders about thought? Does a neural network cogitate, have existential dilemmas, wonder about meaning, wonder about the purpose of life, wonder about the meaning of birth and death, wonder about the nature of the universe? To my understanding, this view, let's call it the Sharma view, is untenable. It just is untenable. It doesn't make any sense, nor does it explain everyday experience, either mental or imagination or introspection or intuition or insight, or just common experience of sound, touch, taste, smell, and likes and dislikes of those experiences. So if reality is one, what is it? What is the universe made of? And in this book, of course, when I said you are the universe, I mean it very literally. You, as awareness, modify yourself into the experience that we call the universe. It's a perceptual experience. The universe is not made up of objects in space and time. The universe is inferred as a result of experiences in awareness, and these experiences are processes in awareness that are objectified as the world of space-time, energy, information, and matter. And in all these kind of theories, the quantum physics theories and physicalist theories, there is a fundamental flaw, which is the subject-object split. The observer is separated from the observed, the seer is separated from the scenery, and the two are thought to be different entities, which raises, of course, another dilemma. How does one actually affect the other? How does the mental world affect the physical world? How does a thought transform into what we call matter, energy, and space-time? So let me, Lirio Herrera, happy birthday to you. Okay, let me read from the book on this section that Elvira has quoted. The problem becomes easier if we stop seeing subjectivity as the opposite of objectivity. They are actually merged into each other. The reason we know this is because the subjective side of experience cannot be isolated or subtracted. In other words, when everything is an experience and everything is, subjectivity must always be present. Naturally, the physicalist camp resists this claim quite strongly. For a century, this great bone of contention has been known as the observer problem. Before it can measure something, science must first observe it. In the classical world, there was no problem observing whatever lay before us, tadpoles, the rings of Saturn, or light being refracted through a prism. One experimenter could leave the room, and no matter who took his place, the observation would remain the same. The observer is only a problem if the very act of looking creates a change in the thing you are looking at. In the human world, and we encounter this all the time, if someone gazes at you with love in their eyes, you are very likely to change, and you will change again if the look becomes indifferent or hostile instead. This change can extend very deep to physical reactions in your body. If you blush or your heart rate beats faster, the chemistry of your physiology is reacting to a mere look. What makes the observer problem unique in quantum physics is that the act of observation can be enough to bring particles into existence in time and space. This is technically known as the collapse of the wave function, meaning that a probability wave, which is invisible and extends infinitely in all directions, changes state and suddenly a particle is visible. One of the basics in quantum mechanics is that a quantum, for instance a photon or electron, can behave either like a wave or a particle. No one disputes this. What is disputed is whether the simple act of observation creates the wave function to collapse. On the physicalist side, things are things, period, and claiming that an observer causes a particle to emerge from the quantum field is mysticism, not physics. But the most widely accepted version of quantum mechanics, the Copenhagen interpretation, so named after the work done at the Copenhagen Institute by Danish physicist Niels Bohr, places the observer at the crossroads between wave and particle. This still leaves open the mechanism that allows the act of looking to affect physical matter. Something must be going on under the table, as it were. Observer A looks at object B with the intention of measuring something about it, such as its mass, position, momentum, and so on. The instant that intention is specified, the object complies. That's the under the table part. No one has an accepted explanation for it. Heisenberg described this in the most definite terms. Quote unquote from Heisenberg, what we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning. The observer cannot be separated from the observed because nature gives us what we want to look for. So this is where Elvira ended her quote with her question. All these problems arise because we think the observer and the observed are two separate entities. In fact, most physicists, if you ask them who is the observer or what is the observer, they'll point here. The observer is somebody, some being that is embodied here in the head and is looking out at the world through these eyes and experiencing the world through the five senses, but the world is a given as is. That, of course, falls apart. That view is called naive realism. And it falls apart because we know that the universe that we experience is a human experience and not the experience, as I've said hundreds of times, of an insect with 100 eyes or a dolphin or a bat or a snake or a plant. Okay, human experience creates the human universe, and it is a result of humans giving symbolic representation to experience. So once we give symbolic representation to human experience, then we create human constructs, whether they are gluons or quarks or electrons or wave functions or the earth, the planet, the physical body, plants, or the entire universe of galaxies, 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, and trillions of planets. These are all symbolic representations of experience, and that symbolic representation of experience is also your body-mind, which goes along with the entire activity, unified activity, that we call the universe. So each of us is perceiving the same reality differently. Well, what is reality made out of? And I have been saying, and there are many others that say this, perhaps even more elegantly and succinctly and clearly than me, such as Rupert Spira and Lucille Francis and many other non-dual teachers, including Bernardo Kastrup, that the universe is made out of consciousness or awareness, which is who you are, which is the knowing element in every experience. But once we know the element in every experience, once we recognize that what we call a fact, quote unquote fact, an empirical fact, that which we call an empirical fact is a particular mode of knowing. And that particular mode of knowing is awareness knowing itself as the object of experience. So awareness is neither the subject nor the object of experience. Awareness is that which knows itself as both the awareness is both the subject and the object of experience. Awareness is both the subject and the object of its experience. Awareness knows itself as both the subject and object of experience. Sebastian and others shared your video. Thank you very much, Sebastian, expanding this conversation. So awareness knows itself as both the subject and object of experience. And then human awareness is such that it creates models out of that, including the model that we call quantum physics. So the wave function in physics anyway is defined as the location of a particle is defined as follows. The location of a particle is dictated by a wave equation, Schrodinger's equation, describing the probability of the particle's existence at a given moment when the particle has a definite location when measured. So measurement determines the statistical probability, and very accurately, of a space-time event in consciousness that we call the particle. In that sense, we are participating in the creation of reality. But who is the we? The we is the awareness that also creates the we is, I was reading the definition of wave function from Wikipedia, and just to be sure that that's the opinion. By the way, not many people now even subscribe to the collapse of the wave function as an observation. They call it a result of decoherence and many other things. There are multiple world theories, multiple universe theories, chaotic inflation theories, etc. The whole field is very, very confused if you try to come up with a physicalist observation. And in any case, these theories are all conceived in consciousness anyway. So you can't get behind consciousness. As I've said before, that's a quote from Max Planck. Max Planck also said, when you observe something, what you observe changes according to the way you observe it. But it's all conjecture and it's all modeling. It's all modeling. I think get to very basic self-inquiry. Who is it or what is it that wants to know? who or what is the knowing element in every experience? Are particles and gluons actual physical things or space-time events in consciousness? Is the subjective experience of individual I an illusion? Is the experience or the interpretation of an observer independent world is real? Ask yourself these questions. Who or what is it that knows that it knows, whether it knows a thought or a particle or a galaxy or a physical body or an emotion or a sensation? Who or what knows that it is having that experience? And then you will see that all these physical theories fall apart. Why? Because what we call the physical world or the material world is an interpretation of experience, and the experience is sense perceptions: sound, touch, sight, taste, smell, and then the interpretation of that as thought, and the liking or disliking of that as emotion. So the world we all experience as human beings is a result of our collective conditioning. That conditioning includes the scientific methodology, which is part of a particular way to explore the world. But what we are exploring is actually our own questions about the world. The universe doesn't exist a priori, and the universe that you and I experience as human beings is a very limited perception of fundamental reality, which is, for lack of a better word, the immeasurable potential of all that was, is, and will be. And that immeasurable potential of all that is, was, and will be is you as awareness, you as infinite possibilities, you as infinite correlation, you as the so-called random or unpredictable movement of atoms, you as the intention to want to know and to observe and to understand. You as awareness are the stuff of the universe. Now, of course, most of that is conditioned. So, and as I've said, centuries of conditioning. So, unless we realize that as long as we can observe it, touch it, taste it, smell it, describe it, imagine it, conceptualize it, measure it, that's not fundamental reality. The fundamental reality is that which does all of the above. It conceives, constructs, governs, and becomes the experience of both the individual subject and that individual subject's perceptual and cognitive reality, usually conditioned, almost universally conditioned through history, economics, religion, culture, a certain slice in the space-time continuum, which also is the human concept, and ultimately it is a collective intersubjective interpretation of reality. And of course there are certain regularities of experience that we call the laws of nature, which then we call objective reality, but it's still an intersubjective human experience and the interpretation of that. So yes, we create our own personal reality, but our personal reality in turn is a result of our collective reality. Our collective experiences, our collective conditioning creates our personal reality. And whilst this is all wonderful to know, what is the practical aspect of this is, the practical aspect of this is that a motley group of sages, psychotics, and geniuses have contributed to the world by breaking out of that collective conditioning. It's that motley group who not only thought outside the box, but who got rid of the box. And these were the major discoveries that created our civilization. So I see I have a break, and I need to come back in a few seconds. So what I was saying is, why is it important that we get out of this conditioning, and how will it change our life? I think the most important way this will change our life if we get out of this conditioning is once we recognize that the universe we experience is a human universe, that it's a human construct, then as we evolve in our deeper understanding of our own self, we will create experiences of different kinds of universes. Whatever the human consciousness can imagine, it ultimately ends up doing, including now space travel, intergalactic probes, landing robots on Mars, people on the moon, exploring the microcosm, gene editing, all human constructs to change human experience. So are we God? And the answer is, we are an aspect of God. We are an aspect of the divine. We are the cosmic mind trying to understand itself through the construct that we call a human nervous system. But even the human brain is a construct. It's a perceptual experience objectified as the object that we call the brain. Elvira, always ask yourself, is this true? Is it true that there's an objective world? Is it true that I have ownership of that which I call my body? Is it true I have ownership of that which I call my thoughts? Is it true that I exist as a separate self? Is it true that my beliefs are true? And then as you slowly shed your habitual certainties, you will live in the world of possibility, creativity, insight, intuition, introspection, imagination. You will break out of the hypnosis of social conditioning, and sooner or later you will be one of that motley gang of sages, psychotics, and geniuses who are slowly but surely overcoming the superstition of matter. And once you overcome the superstition of matter and understand that reality is one, and the nature of that reality is that it's invisible, formless, dimensionless, and that the nature of that reality is that it's not physical, and that you are that timeless, eternal reality in every now, then you will be shaping a new universe and helping it to evolve. Okay? That's it for today. Thank you very much.